I sat in Srinagar, Kashmir in mid-July 1986, waiting for the pass to open, waiting for the road to Ladakh. Every morning I went down to the bus stand to ask the same question, is the road to Leh open today? And every day the answer was the same, not yet. Srinagar rests gently in the Kashmir Valley, about 1,585 meters above sea level, surrounded by water, trees, and softness. The Kashmir Valley feels almost unreal in its beauty. Wide meadows stretch beneath snow-covered peaks, and rivers and canals weave quietly through fields of green. Poplar trees line the roads, and water is everywhere. Lakes, streams, reflections. At the heart of this world is Dal Lake, dotted with wooden houseboats that seem to belong to another era. These floating homes were not built for romance or tourism at first. They were born out of restriction. During the British period, foreigners were not allowed to own land in Kashmir, so British officials, travelers, and administrators found a workaround. They built their homes on water. Over time, those temporary solutions became permanent. The houseboats grew more elaborate, with carved walnut wood interiors, lace curtains, and long verandas opening onto the lake. Each one became a small, floating world, a place to read, write, rest, and escape the heat of the plains below. Shikaras glide silently between them, carrying flowers, vegetables, or passengers, moving at the lake's unhurried pace. Life here flows slowly, shaped by seasons rather than clocks. It's often called the Switzerland of India, and standing there, it's easy to understand why. The air is cool and clean, the lights soft, the landscapes balanced between grandeur and calm. There's a sense of harmony between people and land, water and stone. Yet, even in all that beauty, there's an awareness that this valley is only the beginning. Beyond these green hills lies a harsher world. But even in a place as gentle as Kashmir, the mountains decide when you may leave. It wasn't until July 17th that enough snow had finally been cut away for the road to reopen. I remember seeing a sign there. It claimed this was one of the coldest inhabited places on Earth, second only to parts of Siberia. After days of waiting and uncertainty, it didn't feel like a distant fact. It felt like a warning. For days, crews had worked their way up the mountainside, carving a narrow passage through walls of ice and rock. Only then were the buses allowed to depart. Many Kashmiris I spoke with shook their heads at the idea of going up that road. They said it was too long, too narrow, too unpredictable. A single winding track clinging to the mountains, exposed to avalanches, landslides, and sudden weather changes. Some had never made the journey themselves, not out of lack of curiosity, but out of respect for the risk. Finally, I arrived in Leh for the first time. I was 30 years old. After days of waiting, climbing, and crossing, the town felt both remote and welcoming. Almost immediately, I began making friends, young and old, faces that appear here in these photos. Some were curious, some amused, some simply generous with their time. There was an openness in Leh that I hadn't expected. Conversations started easily, without urgency. Time seemed to stretch differently at that altitude, as if the thin air made space for connection. Those first days weren't about sightseeing or plans. They were about people, shared moments, simple exchanges, and the feeling of having arrived somewhere far from where the journey began. For me, Leh wasn't just a destination. It was an introduction to a place, a culture, and a way of life that would stay with me long after I left. Leh in 1986 felt like a place suspended between centuries. There were no ATMs, no internet, no mobile phones, and very few tourists. The road from Srinagar had only recently become reliable enough for regular buses, and the Manali route was still considered an adventure rather than an option. Reaching Leh meant commitment. Once you arrived, you stayed. The town itself was small and unhurried. Dusty lanes, low mud brick houses, prayer flags fluttering in the wind. The Leh Palace still dominated the skyline, watching quietly over the town as it had for centuries. Above it all, the mountains felt close, not scenic backdrops but constant presences. Life moved slowly, shaped by altitude and climate. At 30,500 meters, even simple things required adjustment. You walked more carefully. You listened to your body. Leh had long been a crossroads, part of ancient trade routes linking Tibet, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. In 1986, that history still felt close. Tibetan culture was everywhere. In the language, the monasteries, the rhythm of daily life. Ladakhi was spoken in the streets, and Tibetan Buddhism shaped both sound and silence. There were few hotels, mostly guest houses and family homes. From my high vantage point at the temple, I pointed the camera down toward the polo grounds. A reminder that polo isn't just a sport here, but part of Ladakh's living heritage. As I zoomed in, you could see the field clearly, framed by dust, mountains, and open space. Then, I slowly zoomed back out. And in that widening frame, Leh revealed itself as it was then. Smaller, quieter, and far less developed than it is today. There were few buildings, no sprawl, no traffic, just clusters of homes, open land, and an overwhelming sense of space. In 1986, Leh felt like a town still held gently by the mountains, not yet reshaped by tourism or modern infrastructure. Watching that footage now, the contrast is striking. The Leh of that moment feels almost fragile. A snapshot of a place just before change arrived. While I was in Leh, I met and spent time with a tall Dutch traveler about my age. Like many of us who made it that far back then, we fell into an easy companionship. No plans, no deadlines, just shared days in a remote place. In these shots you're seeing now, the footage was taken by him. Watching it today, it's impossible not to notice how much younger I was then. Moving easily, unaware of how far that first journey would echo into the future. At the time, I had no way of knowing that this wouldn't be a one-time visit, that Leh would quietly take a place in my life, that I would return again and again, across different decades, different versions of myself. Some places don't just receive you once. They stay with you, and they keep calling you back.